So for this week's project, we're going to be taking a look at this Transcriptors Reference Turntable. And about the only thing I know about these is that one of them was used in a scene from the Stanley Kubrick movie, A Clockwork Orange. Other than that, I know nothing about these. This unit belongs to one of my home customers, and not surprising that he is a college-level art professor, because this thing is definitely stunning to look at. There is no question about that. He got this on a trade with someone. He traded away one of his vintage Pioneer receivers, one of the old ones, one of the large ones, and there was also some cash involved for him to get this. And again, I want to emphasize, I don't know anything about these, but he tells me that there is some modifications that's been made to it. In particular, the tone arm assembly has been changed out. And he says the issue with the unit is that it runs a little bit on the slow side. There's only 3 basic components to this. There's a motor, a belt, and a platter. And so I think the first thing we're probably going to have to take a look at is the motor assembly. When you spin it over with your fingers, of course it's a stepper type motor, and there is kind of a glitch in it, and we'll have a little closer look at that. But other than that, I can't see anything else creating the issue. So as always, we'll come in, we'll have a little closer look at it, and then we'll put a record on it and see what it'll do. Our intro music this week, we're listening to what I would consider to be my favorite song of all time. This is the Emerson, Lake and Palmer classic, From the Beginning, from their album Trilogy. So let's hear a little bit of this, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's pick back up and we'll start a little tour of this amazing device. We're going to start off with this platter, which is extremely heavy, I'm assuming. It has these 5 standoffs that the album actually rests on, and of course a center spindle which unscrews, and the platter would come right off, and we will take it off and have a look. Everything is very nicely machined, as you would imagine for this. I'm told that there apparently was some type of accessory that went here that came up and had a brush on it that brushed the record as it was being played, and one on this side for the stylus. Again, I do not know anything about these, so that's not anything I would be able to verify. And I haven't done any research on it either, so that's another thing. I'm kind of going blind on this. The arm assembly, strangely enough, when I first seen the turntable and he told me what year this was from, and it was from the 60s, I knew this was not from the 60s. This looks very familiar to me. It looks like the type of tone arm they used in those, I want to say those project turntables. I worked at a company that sold those at one time, and it looks real similar to that, but it could just be that it is similar. It's not the same thing, it's just similar looking. This may be of much better quality than what was used in those. And of course they built this up. Apparently this was something that wasn't there, that they built up to accommodate this arm. And underneath there's a couple of patch cords. The patch cords don't look like anything special. I mean, it basically looks to me just like a, 1970s, 1980s patch cord that they found that they wired into that arm, but there's no female RCA jacks under here. It goes up into this and somehow mates with the wiring of the arm underneath. Back here is our motor assembly. There's one switch, and this is the motor. And like I said, it's kind of one of those stepper motors, very similar to the one in that big turntable that I was working on the other day. But when you rotate it back this way, it'll stop. And again, I don't know if that's something that's normal. But we're going to put a strobe disc on it, and we're going to see. He says it's running a little bit slow. And I pulled the belt off just so I could feel the motor. He says this does have a little bit of a warble to it, as if there's something wrong with the shaft, but we'll be looking into that. So I think the first thing, let's go ahead and put the strobe disc on it. You won't be able to see it, but I want to see if he's really correct in his assumption that it's running slow, and I'm sure he probably is. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to these type of things. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll pick back up. Okay, we'll pick back up. I'll put my strobe disc on it, and it is running a little bit slow. There's no question about that. And as for the motor, you can see that motor. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it. So and it looks like it's deep down all the way to the bottom. So there must be something going on with the shaft that's causing it to do that. Let's go ahead and we'll remove the belt. Turn the power off here. And yeah, you can see there's something going on right there. So it looks like to get this off, you're going to remove these three fasteners, and we should have access to get the thing out and have a look at it. The cord that was on this turntable, the socket for that, I'm sure has been changed. This cord wasn't long enough, so I had to get my own cord in order to reach over to the outlet. All right, let's put the camera overhead and let's have a look at this and see what we can see. Okay, let's go ahead and pick back up. I'm going to take these fasteners off here. I've already briefly took a look at this, and I was surprised to find out that this piece right here isn't glass. I thought it was glass when I first seen it, and unfortunately there is a glare, so you see the reflection of the magnifier light in this, but there's not much I can do about that. But when we spin it over, it's not so bad. Let's put a towel down here so we don't damage anything. And from what I've seen, and I'll try to get you in a little closer for that, if I can. The motor is made in France, and it's under the name, what looks to be Creuset. I'm sure I am butchering up the name of that, so I apologize to anyone that can pronounce this correctly, but I'm just not, I mean, obviously you see here we got a motor and a switch, and that's pretty much it. One other thing I noticed, and I'll point this out, and this kind of plays into when he was talking about they had done some modifications to this. I noticed coming out of the back of here, I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And so come around to the other side, and you can see, one, where they changed out that AC socket, and two, they put a DC socket in right here. So it makes me wonder if the idea was to change this motor. This motor is bad, and they wanted to change it over to a DC motor, which I would think you could do. And I noticed that as far as the spindle is concerned, and we'll get a little closer look at that. It unscrews and comes off, and it looks like this part, there's a washer there, and it looks like this part is maybe made onto that shaft. I don't know how you would get it off. I don't see any type of Allen screw or anything holding this piece on. So I'm just not sure. So we'll remove that. Let's go ahead and apply the power back to it and see if we can see it wobbling. I'm sure we'll be able to. I can see it doing it, but I think it's hard to pick it up in the camera. But yeah, you can see that it is doing it. So I'm not sure. It all looks very pressed fitting together to me. I don't think there's a way to open that up. Or at least if there is, I don't know. I'd sure hate to try it and then mess it up even more to where it won't run at all. But yeah, I don't see that there's any way to do that. I think I'm going to do a little research on this. I haven't even looked into even an owner's manual to this to try to find one. Maybe there's one on vinyl engine. And then I'll pick back up, I guess, with some final thoughts and, maybe what I would suggest to him. But it looks like we're definitely going to be leaning towards a motor. So give me a minute for that and we'll come back. Okay, as we come back in, I've done a little research here and I think I'm more confused now than I was before I started, just simply because I can't find this particular one. Every one that I see, and there's no manual for this particular one on hi-fi or vinyl engine, this part of it, I see that clearly in most all the models that I'm looking at, but the platters are not this high. And it could just be they don't have that particular model listed, but I would think I'd see it somewhere. This one is what they call a hydraulic reference turntable, and it is similar but not exact. And if we go to a blow up of the service manual, again, similar but not quite the same thing. You can see that that platter is not as high as this. If we go to eBay, and there's a few for sale here, but of course not the one that we're working with. They're still pricey. And of course there's a lot of parts, but no motor, as you would imagine. And so I don't know. I'm not seeing any platters or any of the turntables that look like this one. And I looked through the completed ones too. International, nothing. A lot of parts, but nothing that looks like the one that we got over here. I did find this site, which they call Transcriptors NC, and in their gallery I didn't see it either. I mean, I see a lot of ones that look similar, but not exact. I mean, the plinth looks very similar with the 3 feet, but I just don't see any ones that are this high. So I don't know. Is it possible that somebody got a hold of some parts for a transcriber and made themselves a plinth? Probably not, but maybe. So I'm not real sure. I think that it doesn't make any difference anyway. There's definitely going to be a motor. Somebody's going to have to find a motor. And if not, then something will have to be fabricated to actually go ahead and put a DC motor in this and run it with a DC motor. So I think that as far as my part of it is concerned, I've kind of gone as far as I can go until a plan is put in place to either find a motor or fabricate something different to make this platter work at the correct speed. I know he talked about trying to get the original arm at some point and change it all back over. And another thing, I didn't see any that had this built-in level in it from the pictures that I was able to look at. So I don't know. Well, I think for the last thing, let's go ahead and we'll put it back together. And I mean, we got to put a record on it and see what it sounds like. The cartridge that's in this is, well, I can't get a good look at it. We'll take a look at that once we get it all put back together, but yeah, we'll go ahead and put a record on it and see what it sounds like, see what the arm sounds like. So give me a second for that and we'll come back. Picking back up, did get everything back together. One thing I noticed about this cartridge, see if I can get you in here. This is a Rega Carbon, or Riga, depending on how you pronounce that. Did find this tone arm, which is also under that name. And another red flag item. I don't know if it means anything, may not mean anything to anybody, but this label that reads Transcriptors Reference Turntable is on here just a slight bit crooked. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on here, but it's got a little bit of a lean to it. It's kind of slanted this way. If you look at the distance between the bottom of the label and the top of the label, it's clearly more at the bottom than at the top. Again, don't know if it means anything, probably just being picky, but I would think that something this nice wouldn't have those type of flaws. All right, let's get a record on it and let's finish this one up. All right, we'll pick back up. We got our standard Thin Lizzy Renegade bench test record going here. Let's cut her on and get her going.
They say people out in Hollywood live their life out in black and white. They're living out a technicolor dream. Next day they're a star overnight. Not like in New York. Man, it's tougher.
I don't know. I mean, I think I hear more of a little bit of wow and flutter than I do the speed thing. But still, I hear something. And there's clearly some kind of an issue. I think I'll be making some recommendations to the customer and kind of tell him what I found out and let him do a little bit more research himself and see if he can determine if this thing is real. I don't know that it's not real, but a couple of red flags for sure. And if anyone sees the video and knows these turntables well, and please weigh in and give me your thoughts on this. Because as I said previously, I don't know anything about these. But he does have a working turntable, just one with an inaccurate motor. So he'll be making some decisions. As always, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. And we'll be back with something a little more exciting maybe next time. Didn't do a lot of repair here other than just some exploratory surgery. So we'll get something better going next week. Thanks for watching.